All right.
Stop. Where's the nice one?
Well, it's been a grind today, but I think we finally have a fish on. He's staying down. This might be an okay fish.
I still have 50 feet of line coming.
Just stop reeling when you see color, and I'll grab the net. It's one of those days where when these get up to the surface, it might end up just being a big fat bass. That's okay, we take it today. Oh, it's pulling.
There it is, I see him.
All right, let me get the net on that. That looks, what? That looks like a trout. Holy smokes, dude. It's beautiful. Here, let me get this out of here. Oh, that is just lift your rod. Oh man, got him. Oh, he smokes. Look at that.
It's a Macks.
Here, let me put this down. Nice, dude. Very nice. Are you kidding me? A Mackinac Jenkinson Reservoir? Man, I'll take it. Certainly wasn't what we were after that day, but after the day Matt and I had, that was a very welcome sight to see hit the deck of the boat. So let me tell you how it led up to that fish. Jenkinson was not on our radar that day at all. Matt and I actually started our day at O'Dark 30 up at Caples Lake at the top of the hill, and we rolled in, made 3 or 4 passes around the lake, had very little to show for it. There was very few marks, if any, no bites, no nothing. I threw the entire tackle box at them. We tried fast, slow, shallow, deep. We did it all. It just wasn't happening. And I'm not sure why. That lake should be pretty solid, especially the time of year we were there. It mimics Davis very closely in size and shape, but it just wasn't happening for us. And then about mid-morning, right over the top of the hill, we got a little wisp of smoke start rolling in, and within 45 minutes to an hour, the entire lake was socked in. There was a local forest fire up there and that morning, and it completely smoked out the lake. So we packed up our stuff, started heading down the hill to get below the fire. Certainly didn't want to get stuck in that mess. And the next local area we drove to was Jenkinson Slide Park, so we thought we'd give it a shot. Now, I was at Jenkinson just a few days before we filmed this, and I was with my dad, and we trolled the lake for several hours, and I didn't mark hardly anything. We had no bites, no fish, nothing in the water column. It was just kind of a dead zone. So I wasn't super ambitious about our chances of catching anything, but we were trying to salvage a couple hours of a long day on the water, and obviously getting smoked out at Caples didn't help our cause any, so it was convenient, so we pulled in and thought we'd give it a shot. One thing that was consistent between when Matt and I were there and I was there a few days prior with my dad is we did find a lot of isolated marks very close to the bottom in the deepest parts of the lake. Jenkinson has 2 dams. There's kind of a shallow dam near the boat launch, main boat launch, and then there's a little island or peninsula area, and then there's a larger dam. And in front of the larger dam, it's pretty deep. It's 120, 130 feet deep when the lake is full. I think it was about 110 when we were there, so it's fairly full. But consistently, we saw marks stuck to the bottom of the lake, pretty much everywhere in the deep area, tapering off into about 90 feet of water. So that's where we focused our efforts. And again, we trolled everything we had, started fast, slowed down, ended up putting out trolling flies very slow, couldn't get anything to take, and weren't really marking anything other than the few marks on the bottom. So I took a page out of my playbook from my old Seattle days, fishing Puget Sound for salmon, and kind of set up what we would call up there a dredger rig. And it's really simple. Basically, the idea is we're going to drag a downrigger ball right on the bottom, literally dragging the bottom, and try to stir up whatever's down there and get them off the bottom. And then we'll take the second downrigger, set it 10 or 15 feet higher in the water column, so it's about 15 feet off the bottom with a very long setback, and pull something through that so that gets pulled through all the stirred up mess. So we did that. We dropped the first downrigger. I did a couple test bounces, make sure it was soft bottom, was fairly certain it was. I felt confident we could pull this off with the gear we had and the downriggers on the boat. And so set the first downrigger 2 feet. I gave it about 2 feet of slack basically. So I set it all the way down to the bottom with the boat stopped, put out another 2 to 3 feet of line, and then started the boat up at about 1.2, 1.4 miles an hour, really slow. You don't want to go too much faster than that when you're using this technique because there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And then we put the second downrigger down with about a 220 foot setback. So pretty far off the back of the boat and well behind our other gear that was dragging on the bottom. And we put it about 15 feet higher in the water column. So in order to do this effectively, obviously, if that ball gets hung up down there at those depths, all kinds of bad things can happen. So we always run snubbers on our downrigger balls in the boat. You can see a picture of it there. It's just a big rubber band. Should anything happen and that downrigger ball get lodged in a tree or a log or under a rock or somewhere where it's not coming out, it's not going to break the line. It's not going to break the boom on the downrigger. That snubber is going to break and we're going to lose our ball. But there are much worse things that could happen, especially when you're dredging on the bottom of the lake that deep. So I use that setup all the time. And when I put the clip on that rod, the deep rod, the dredging rod, I set it about 6 feet off the ball. So it was probably 2 to 3 feet off the bottom. And we set a setback on another fly about 50 feet off the ball at that point. So downrigger ball on the bottom, 3 feet up off the bottom, have a 50-foot setback to a fly, have another downrigger down 15 feet off the bottom with a 200+ foot setback on it, very slowly dragging the bottom of the lake. And believe me, we were ready to hit the downrigger whenever we needed to either pop the clutch loose or crank it up should it snag. We didn't have any problems. It honestly worked out really well. And lo and behold, we caught that killer Mackinaw. So that's a technique that if you're really stuck and really hung up, I don't use it often, but it works really well, especially if you're trying to get fish off the bottom. Side note, don't do it in your kayak. You're just asking for trouble, guys. If that ball hooks up at all, even with a snubber on it in the kayak, it's going to roll your kayak over long before the snubber breaks, and you're going to be cold and wet and have a mess on your hands that's very challenging to get out of. So I strongly suggest not doing this in the kayak. Works pretty well in the boat at low speeds. Know your gear, trust your gear, and you can pull it off. Let me show you what those fish hit that day. That fish hit that day. We had one of our standard trolling flies out. It's in a shadfish pattern. It was this exact fly actually. You can see it's about a 2.5 inch long fly, has a little tinsel skirt in it, and the 2 big eyeballs on the hook there. We get a lot of questions on how to rig these guys. It's really, really simple. Not a whole lot to it, guys. This is 8-pound fluoro leader, okay? I tie it with the Palomar directly to the fly. The other end, I'll tie a snap clip on that I will clip on my main line behind a trolling swivel, a good quality trolling swivel. And then we always run the wiggle disc to put a little action on the fly. Those come in our fly kits. And in between the wiggle disc and the fly, I use one of those little guys. Bass guys recognize that as a rubber bobber stop. Put that on first and then slide the wiggle disc on. And that does a couple things. First thing it does is it keeps the wiggle disc from pounding on your knot on the fly. That can cause a lot of problems if you just don't use the bead in there to save the knot. It will eventually beat the crap out of that knot until it breaks. And it usually breaks after a fish is on, which is really bumming. You lose your fly and the fish and your wiggle disc at that point. So put the bobber stop on, saves your knot. The other thing it does is it allows you to adjust the action on the lure. If you slide this bobber stop and wiggle disc all the way down to the fly, it has crazy erratic action. It's going to wiggle like nuts in the water, okay? Probably more action than you need 90% of the time. There is a time and a place where you'd want to set it up that way, but usually I'll start with the wiggle disc probably 1.5 to 2 inches off the nose of the fly. It gives it a little bit less action. It gives a little bit of distance between the knot and the wiggle disc, and you can adjust it throughout the day. So if you slow down and you want less action, you can slide this bobber, or you can slide the bobber stop and the wiggle disc pretty far away. You can go as far as 6 or 8 inches away, and with your 8-inch fluoro or your 8-pound fluorocarbon, you're still going to get enough action on the fly to draw a strike if they like that subtle presentation. You can also slide it down and get a lot more. action on it. So like I said, I usually start about there, maybe 2 inches off, and let that go and adjust it throughout the day. If you have multiple flies out, I would suggest starting in 2 different spots on each one. So run one maybe 3 inches off the fly and 1 inch off the fly, and just tune them in as you get going through the day and find out what they like. By the end of the day, you're probably going to have them all set to about the same distance off the fly, depending on what the fish are doing. So that was my day at Jenkinson. Super cool to get a fish in the boat, a Mackinaw even. That's certainly the lowest elevation Mackinaw I've ever caught. I knew they were in there, like I said, but I had no intention of targeting them and didn't really expect to land one, especially a quality one. That was a nice big fish. So Matt was pretty happy with that. I was pretty happy with it. So if you get a second, Jenkinson's gonna pop here soon. So definitely leave that on your list and give it a shot this fall before the fall totally runs out. It's gonna be one of the lakes that doesn't dice over, and there's no traffic there at all right now. Super easy in and out, great facilities, and worth a shot. All right, appreciate it, guys. If you haven't already, please click the subscribe button below. If you have any more questions on any of our gear, you can shoot us an email from fishhuntshoot.com, and be sure to check out the store. It's fully stocked. We got all kinds of good stuff over there, including our fly kits. I have a bunch of them sitting here ready to go. A bunch of them have sold already, but if you haven't gotten on that yet, that's definitely something you want in your arsenal. All right, have a good one, guys.